Good evening everyone, welcome to our second edition of Making Some Breads. Tonight what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making a challah or a kitka, as some of you might know. Tonight what we're going to be showing you is a couple of things in terms of how to make it and how to braid the bread, because as you can see with the recipe over here, the recipe does require some braiding involving the whole situation, and ultimately it is going to be a pretty tasty bread. First thing, just like we did last time, I'm going to tell you about the ingredients that we've got, and we're going to start the recipe from that point. So the first thing we're going to show you is obviously the ingredients. Obviously we need some flour. In this case I'd recommend a bread flour, because you do want the bread to be more of a chewiness. And that's the difference between the cake flour and the bread flour, is the bread flour will give a more chewy texture, where the cake flour will give more of a sponge texture. In this case we want a bread, not a sponge texture. So we've got 4 cups of bread flour. On top of that we have some sugar. We've got a quarter cup of sugar. Might not seem like it is, but there is a quarter cup in there. We've got 2 teaspoons of salt. We've got 1 packet of yeast. We've got oil, and that is a half a cup of oil, as well as 1 cup of lukewarm water. And then also we've also got some eggs on the side there. So as you can see, the ingredients to make most breads are very similar, very straightforward, and actually pretty easy to make when you actually do make them. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to start putting the things together, explain to you how I'm going to be doing it. Obviously my lovely wife is going to be listening and watching. We're going to be watching for any comments. If there's any questions, you obviously can give a shout, and then as soon as there is a bit of a delay, so as soon as she gets the message, she'll obviously ask, and I'll take it from there. In terms of equipment that you're going to be needing, so obviously again you're going to be needing your mixing bowl. You're going to be using a cup and a half a cup, or quarter cup, sorry. These are your two most important equipment, because from this, the great thing about this recipe is there's no weighing involved. It is purely a cup or a quarter cup, straightforward like that. Also on top of that, we're going to be using our Kenwood mixer again. We're going to be using the dough hook, and as well as we're going to be needing an extra bowl, a nice big bowl for the rising process. This is quite important to allow it to rise in an enclosed area, so don't try and rise it on a tray. You could if you really wanted to, if you didn't have time or the space, but I highly recommend either you rise it in the bowl itself or in a glass bowl like this, obviously closed like this. Yeah. Very important, because ultimately what's going to happen is it's going to rise. It's basically going to make a warm mini oven basically. Right.
Chad says, I like the t-shirt.
That's appropriate. Alright, so the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting with our yeast. Let me put the sound down. It's quite noisy in the corner here.
Fine.
It's not working yet. Alright. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be blooming our yeast. So if you guys didn't catch it last time, I'm going to do it much more slow and more in detail now. So obviously you're going to need your yeast for starters. First thing we're going to do is we're going to open that yeast. As you can see, the whole thing goes straight into there like that. There we go. Then the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding the sugar to the yeast. So you take a little bit of the sugar that you had, about a half a teaspoon like that, and you sprinkle it over the whole thing like that. Then we're going to take some of your lukewarm water, taking a quarter cup of the cup that you already have measured out, as you can see, like that, and you pour that into there like that. Now what you're going to do is you're going to give this a nice little mix, just like we did last time. Ensure everything is nicely mixed together. So remember, this is called blooming the yeast. Also very important when it comes to making bread. This ensures that your yeast is activated and is working. The last thing you want to not do is add your yeast to a mixture that some breads call for the yeast just to be added to the flour. The problem with that is if you do add yeast straight into like that, if your yeast is not ready or activated or expired, it won't show when you do it this way. Will definitely show it when you do it this way. So just like we did last time, we're going to put it in a warm spot over here, just like that. And we're going to allow this to rise. That's it. Alright. So the next thing is we're going to allow that to rise. So that takes roughly about anywhere from between 5 to 10 minutes. Do not try and speed it up. Do not put it in a microwave. Do not put any salt in it, and do not put any boiling water into it. Lukewarm water, a little bit of salt, sugar, and the yeast itself. Mix it up and allow it to rise. Alright. Right, the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be mixing our main primary ingredients, which would be our flour into the bowl, our sugar, our 1/4 cup sugar, and our 2 teaspoons of salt. Straight into that. Right. Then just like we did yesterday, you want to take a whisk and you want to mix it through nicely, ensuring that the sugar and the salt is evenly distributed between the whole thing, and make sure that it is completely mixed through. Again, this will make sure that you've got a balanced flavor and equal flavoring across the whole bread once it's done. As you can see, that's all it takes, and it also loosens up any clumps that are actually in the flour itself. The next thing we will be doing is doing the eggs. So you just put this on the side. So we take our eggs, take this bowl here, there we go. And the first thing is you're going to be taking 2.5 eggs, or you're going to be taking, not 2.5, 2 eggs, 1 whole and 1 half. So what I mean by half is, obviously an egg, there's 2 parts to it. There's a white and there's a yellow to it. So now we obviously just need the yellow in this recipe, and the white we'll be using at a later stage. So what we're going to be doing in terms of how to actually get it out, all you're going to be doing is get your hand in, just like a little claw almost, slightly that, so there's little slits in between your fingers, and you're going to just scoop the egg up. It's a little bit messy, but it's super quick. You just get underneath the yolk and just put it on your hand like that, and you pick the whole thing up like that. Alright. So then you can see you put that egg yolk into there. You can see there's very little white that comes with it. The second one, do the same thing, straight into there, and then you got to do half of the egg white, which will be about that. There we go. I'm just going to wash my hands quick. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to give this egg a slight little whisk. Mix it up a little bit. You don't want to be beating this. You're not trying to whisk any air into it. You're just beating it up like this. The next thing you're going to be adding is your oil. It's a 1/4 cup of oil. Goes into the mixture. Get as much of it in there as possible. And give this a nice little mix. And this one you want to allow it to mix quite nicely. Again, I'm not whisking it up. I'm just giving it a stir. Making sure that it mixes nicely through. There we go. So see, you don't see any oil anywhere. It just looks like a scrambled egg really. Alright. The next thing we're going to be doing is we are going to mix this. I just want to dry my hands. Just give me a second. Alright. Okay, so what you want to do is the white that is left over, you want to keep this. This is quite important because once the bread is done, you want to take this white and you want to brush it on top just before you bake it so that you get a nice beautiful glaze and darkening of the bread itself. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start the kneading process. So the reason why I use a Kenwood mixer, it not necessarily a Kenwood mixer, but a mixer is this dough. Although you can do it by hand, it's better if you use a mixer because of the actual texture that you're wanting to get. The quicker it goes, in this case, the better. So definitely try to use one, but again, you don't have to use one, you can do it by hand. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking our egg and oil mixture, adding it to our flour, ensure that we get everything into it, like that. Wipe the counter, there we go. And then as you can see there, you can either put it straight into the middle or you can just put it as I've done there. And then what we're going to be doing, as you can see the yeast itself, it's nicely bloomed again. You can see the little bubbles that are happening in there, tiny little bubbles, and all the big bubbles around there. So this straight away tells me that this yeast is ready to go. It is activated and we can add it in straight away. So this we pour in just like that. Make sure you get all the little sides and everything into it. because the more of the yeast you get in, the better the flavor, the better the rye is going to be. Right, the next process is the actual kneading part of it. So now we're going to take our mixer, put this on, and we're going to start closing. So I'll leave you guys with this as it's mixing through while I just clean up the front there quickly. If you've got any questions, now's the time to ask. No questions?
Nope, nothing yet.
Alright. Alright, so note how everything's starting to come together quite nicely. You want to start on it slow like this, you don't want to speed it up. Where's your wine? So if you take a look here, this is the wine of the evening. Very tasty, very delicious. So cheers to you all. I've put onto the whole wine thing. Pretty good diet, I think. Alright. So now that it's starting to clump up nicely in the middle, we're going to speed it up just a little bit, just to get the whole thing going. If you feel that it's a little bit too dry, like you can see there on the edge, it seems very dry on the edge, and the inside at the very middle seems a bit doughy. What you can do is you can add a little bit more water, because remember you still have that cup of water that we haven't added, and then you start adding from this point.
Okay, we've got 3 questions.
Yes.
Billy Baker, hi guys, where does Challa Bread come from?
That is a good question. I'm going to probably say it comes
It's a Jewish bread,
It's a
isn't it?
Jewish bread. It's known as a celebration bread. And where it comes from, I'm probably going to say from the Jewish states. Honestly, I don't know. It's a difficult one to answer. I can Google for you at a later stage.
Billy, we will find out and let you know.
Make sure.
Alright, Joanne, she says, does egg in the dough not slow the rising process?
No, it does not. In fact, it does the very opposite. It speeds up the rising process.
Alright, and then Kelly, she said, what if someone does not have a mixer?
You can do this all by hand. In a bowl, it doesn't have to be a bowl like this, but in a bowl, you just put into a bowl like this, you put everything into here, and you start mashing it with your hands like this. As you go down, mash up and down. Like I say, you can do this all by hand. It's preferable with a machine because of the amount of kneading that needs to happen with this. So if you come take a closer look, you'll see what's happening. You can see how it's starting to stick to the very bottom. You want to add a little bit more flour. You want to make sure whatever's at the bottom is not sticking to any bowl. Okay, can you start seeing it's starting to pull away from the bottom a little bit? Now we can turn it up on its fullest and really give it a good beat. Alright, so now that we've given this a nice good beat, you could allow this to beat for about between 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how you're doing it. If you're doing it by hand, I definitely recommend doing it at least 15 minutes. As an example, I've stopped it a little bit early just to show you how you could do it by hand. So what we'll do is we'll take it. So once you've started your mixture, obviously, when everything's starting to clump together, you take your bread. As you see, this bread is still very, very sticky. You don't want it to be sticky. You want it to resemble a pastry almost. It does not look like your typical dough. As you can see, it's very, very sticky right now. Put that aside. as you can see, it's a very sticky bread, and that's not how you want it. You want it to be sticky to your hands, but not actually coming off like this. You want your hands to be completely clear. So you rub these off your hands, and working those into the bread there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you've started by washing your hands, which you should have done already. And ultimately, we mix that extra bit of flour in. So remember the V knead that I was telling you about the last time. You start by rolling it by one hand, pulling it back, rolling it by the other hand, pulling it back. And you continue doing this. And this is how you would do it by hand once it's all started putting together. You can allow this, you can do this for anywhere from 10 to half an hour if you really wanted to. But as you can see by this dough, it's almost there. Adding a little bit of extra flour to it as we go along. Okay, so when I said just now it must be sticky but not coming off on your hands, this is what I meant by that. Where if I take this bread, if you see my hands, they're not really that dirty. If I do that, you can see it's kind of sticking to my hands a bit, like that, but nothing's coming off of my hands. Go like this. If you see there, you can see it's actually sticking a little bit to my hands, but it's not coming off of my hands. That's what you're looking for. Alright, so then all we're going to do is you're just going to squeeze it like this. Really get those glutens working inside the bread itself. The more gluten there is, the more puffier the bread's going to be. And so that's what you're looking for. Alright, so as you can see, there's your ball. You are going to allow this to rise for at least about an hour and a half. From that point, we will be able to braid it. But when you do rise it, you want to take your glass bowl, as we had. You want to take a little bit of oil, just splash it into the little bowl like that. As you can see, not a lot. The oil is purely there for the bread to not stick. You take your bread, you put it on top of that oil, and you spin it around, and you get it up on the sides, just like that. Then you're going to take your cloth. You're going to take your cloth, and you're going to cover it. And now you're going to put this in a warm area and allow it to rise for about an hour and a half. After an hour and a half, once everything has risen, obviously in that time, if you were making a dinner, you could obviously continue with that, kind of ignore this, allow it to double in size. After an hour and a half, your dough should look like this. As you can see, it has more than doubled in size. This is what you're looking for. As a comparison side by side, you can see like that. Alright. Okay, so now what we're going to do, and now I'm going to show you why you put oil in the first place, is now you're going to take this, you're going to put your hand out, a little bit of flour on it, and allow the dough to roll out. So if you look on the glass over there, you can see it slowly coming off. Do not force it, because you're going to knock it all down. You will be knocking this down in a second, but you don't want to knock it down right now. There we go, pull the whole thing out. There we go, see that? That is a beautiful risen dough right there. So now what we're going to do is very gently, we are going to roll it like a sausage, like that. What?
You're fine.
Alright, so once we've done this, as you can see, it was a very, very light roll. We're not trying to knock it down just yet. Now what we're going to be doing is you can choose to either do a 3 braid or 5 braid. We are going to be doing a 3 braid, and this is, if you know anything about braiding hair, it's exactly the same thing. All you're going to be doing is you're going to be dividing this into 3 pieces. Always remember that your center piece, this piece over here, will have more dough than your side pieces. So what you want to do is your side pieces almost seem to get a little bit more, about that, where your center piece will seem a little bit less. But that center piece will most likely either be even, or it will be actually more than the side pieces because of the little bit that's actually on there. Obviously, always make sure that you're either working on a counter or a board or anything like that, or be very gentle and do not cut the table itself. Not only will it destroy your knives, but it will destroy the counter as well. So as you can see, you've got your 3 pieces all roughly equal. Now the fun part begins. So now we're going to be actually rolling, essentially making little bread sausages. And that's what we're going to be doing from now.
Hold on, I'm trying to get you in as well. There we go.
There we go. Alright. So what we're going to be doing is if there's any hard pieces on your table, board or counter, clear it away. Make sure it's just a little bit of flour, not a lot. The reason you don't want to have a lot of flour is because if there's too much, what's going to be happening is instead of this rolling, because you want this to actually stick a little bit to the counter, instead of it actually rolling, it's just going to be sliding up and down. So you want there to be a little bit of flour, but not a lot. So now we're going to begin by taking this, essentially doing a very gentle squeeze and pull, like that, giving a rough sausage shape, and then we're going to be rolling. And the way we roll is with your two hands straight out. I'm going to put, as I'm pushing the bread down onto the board, I'm also rolling it forward, but at the same time, as it gets past my knuckle area over here, I'm going to start spreading my fingers out like that. As you can see, it gets a little bit longer. Roll it back, and you continue like that. See how it's already starting to get longer? Now you just continue rolling, and you continue rolling, and you continue rolling until you get to the desired size. Now obviously when it comes to the size, that would ultimately be your decision. You can make this as thick as you want to or as thin as you want to. Alright, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing that. As you can see, I'm just giving it a nice stretch to make sure that it's nice and even. So that's a nice size that you're looking for. If I compare it to my thumb, it's a little bit bigger than my thumb, as you can see. Alright, now you're going to do the exact same thing with the next one. Start really rough, getting that round sausage going. And then if it's too much on one side, push it down nicely. And then again, note the amount of flour on the counter where I'm actually rolling, very little to minimum. Again, you do not want it to be on the flour because it will just be sliding all over the place. In terms of how even the bread is or the roll is, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfectly even, but you do want them to be roughly the same shape over there. The next thing, now this is the middle piece, you're going to be doing the exact same thing. So again, gently pull it out, like that, and then again, rolling it out again. Is there any questions, anything like that anyone wants to ask? Quiet night tonight? Not a problem. Alright, so just going to do that. So note that this side was very thin. So all I did was I put my hand here and I slowly just rolled it across until it thickened up on that side. And then I can continue going because it's now filled up on that side. Alright. Alright, so now we've got our three pieces. Again, they don't have to be absolutely perfect. There we go, just like that. Alright, so now comes the actual braiding process. So obviously, because this has got this thinner side, and you do squish these together, you're going to start on this one. When you look at these three, you want to choose your thickest, biggest, longest piece that you have. In this case, it's going to be this one over here. When you've done that, that goes into the middle, like that. Yeah, just like that. Then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking the top ends. You're obviously looking for your most unattractive sides. As you can see, these are quite nice on this side not so much. This side we're going to be squeezing together like that, but then we're going to be grabbing it and giving a nice good tight squeeze where it basically binds the bread back together again. Don't worry about how this looks right now, we will actually get back to that in a little bit. So now when it comes to braiding, for all of you who do not know how to braid, a simple step on braiding is 2 to 1. Quite straightforward, and the outside, whatever the side has got the 2 on, is always the one to go over the middle. So in that case, that would be this one. You lift it up, you fold it over the middle piece. Now you can see this side has 2, so that means the outside piece is going to go over the middle piece. So you go over that piece like that. You can push that out a little bit. There you go. You can start seeing your braid happening over here. Again, your outside piece over the middle piece. And you continue doing this way. Now what you want to make sure that you do is every time you do the fold, make sure these are quite nicely tucked in, as tight as you can get them. And you don't force them there because you don't want to get your fingers in there. You're just going to be doing that. And you're folding it over and over. And you can see how the braid is coming together quite nicely. Over, and you keep going until you run out of dough. And this little piece here, we can do that. Alright, so you can see your dough, your bread got a beautiful shape to it, although it's not really finished on the ends. So now obviously over here, what we're going to be doing, just like we did on the other side, you're going to grab that, you're going to squeeze it on the end there, make sure all that bread is nicely tucked together, cut the very ends off. Now you don't have to cut the ends off, I prefer to cut the ends off because they give a much more cleaner shape at the end, just like that. And then what you're going to do, gently, those ends, you just tuck slightly underneath the bread, and then gently push it down. As you can see, it goes all the way out nicely there. The same thing on this side. Tuck in like that. There we go. Right, so as you can see, that is the color in terms of how to actually make it and how to braid it. The next thing we're going to be doing is obviously a tray. Give it a nice good spray. Now this doesn't require too much spray and cook, because of the way it's actually been baked. It's not been baked in the tin, so there's not much to actually hold it together. Just make sure that where you put the color itself, there's enough spray and cook on there. The next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting this straight on, just like that. And then you are going to allow then we are going to put that egg white that you saved earlier. So all we're going to be doing is taking that egg white with a brush, giving a rough little mix like that, as you can see, and then we're going to brush on here. Now you want to be quite gentle with it, because obviously this is a already risen dough, so if you push it down too hard it will flatten out. And obviously again, if you flatten out a bread, you'll end up with a beautiful braided rock and not a beautiful cooked bread. As you can see, we're going to get along the sides. We're going to get right to the very bottom. If you do touch the tray, it is not a problem at all. You want to make sure you get in between the little braids like that. Again, don't push too hard. I'm just going to allow the brush itself to really get inside there. And you want to coat it as much as you can. Obviously don't go ahead and pour this over, because that will be too much. As you can see in the middle there, how it's clumping up like that. You want to try just empty that out like that. You don't want it to be clumping like that, because when it bakes, you instead of going to have this beautiful color, you will have a nicely baked scrambled egg in between your bread. Alright, as you can see, the whole thing's nicely coated and whatnot. So now what you're going to do is you're going to allow this to rise again in a warm space. You're going to allow this to rise for at least 20 minutes after once it's been rolled like this. So we're just going to let this sit here open just as is. The egg wash itself will also protect it in case there's any flies, or protect it from the heat itself, but it can sit there for about 20 minutes. Once that's done, the process of baking the bread is simply heating up your oven. So once this is done and you've put your egg wash on it, you're going to switch your oven on 180 for anywhere from 20 to 35 minutes depending on the size of the color. If a recipe ever tells you, especially when it comes to bread, that a recipe needs to be cooked for half an hour, never put it for the full half an hour. Always put it for 20-25 minutes and check it thereafter. Okay. So obviously, while this is busy heating up, you're going to get your oven ready to a nice 180 degrees. Obviously, this oven is ready. Then you're going to put it in and you're going to allow the bread to bake it. Then the next process is obviously baking it and taking it out. Now, we don't want you to essentially stare at an oven for the next 20 minutes because that's a bit boring. So what we've got is we've got a bread already done that once it comes out, it looks like that.
Oh, yeah.
So as you can see, you popped it off. It's extremely hot because obviously it just came out the oven. So you pop it over. Voila. So now the way you check it, just like if you've missed the way I showed you last time, you take a metal skewer like this or a small thin knife. You choose the thickest part of the whole thing, which will probably be this little piece here, and you go at an angle into the very center. Get it in there, hold that there for at least 5 seconds, and then you're going to put it onto this part of your hand here. It's very sensitive to heat. If you can take this out like that and keep it on like that, it means it's not baked. But if you take it out and it stings like that, you can see I can't really keep it there, it stings, you know it's done. Again, as you can see, it doesn't make a mark. It doesn't hurt me in a point where it's like, I don't want to do that. It's more of a slight sting really. Now that I've done that, I know for a fact that this is done. And as you can see, this bread is beautiful. It's a great centerpiece bread. And then from that point, you can take your bread onto a prepared board, put it on there, just like that. And now you have a beautifully baked challah that can be made in about 2 hours total. Alright, one other thing to mention is next week we'll be continuing our these classes throughout the week. Every single day we'll be doing one recipe every day. I will do every second day. Breck we'll do Monday, Wednesday and Friday. I'll be doing Thursday, Tuesday and Thursday. Also, we've got a special class happening next week Saturday for Easter. Myself and my son will be making some chocolate muffins and maybe one or two other secret little things we might be doing. So please join us on there, and maybe you can join us and do it with us. We'll be doing that class on Saturday at 12 o'clock so that you can do it during the day with your kids as well. And we can also maybe do a little lunch thing as well for them.
In the comfort of your own home.
In the comfort of your own home, obviously. Alright. So that's how you make a challah. Thank you so much. And just remember that anyone can cook. Thank you so much.